January 1945. The Netherlands is locked in winter. Canals are frozen into dull, motionless lines. Bicycles lie abandoned in snowbanks, their tires stiff with ice. Inside narrow brick houses, windows are covered with cloth, not glass, broken months earlier by bomb shockwaves or stripped away for firewood. Smoke does not rise from chimneys. There is nothing left to burn. In the streets of Western Dutch cities, children move slowly, not playing, not running, walking with the careful steps of the exhausted. Their coats hang loose on bodies that have grown smaller by the week. Faces are pale, cheeks hollow, eyes too large for their frames. Hunger has reshaped them. A low rumble breaks the silence. Not artillery, not bombing, engines. At the edge of a ruined road, American soldiers appear, boots crunching on snow, rifles slung, breath visible in the air. They stop when they see the children. The soldiers do not speak at first. They simply look. One of them reaches into his pocket, a ration bar, then another. Hands extend, small, shaking. In that frozen moment, between a collapsing occupation and a war not yet over, something shifts. Not the front line, not the strategy, hope. And that fragile hope begins where the suffering can no longer be ignored, leading directly into how the Netherlands reached this breaking point and why salvation arrived so late. May 10, 1940. Before dawn, German aircraft crossed the Dutch border. Paratroopers drop near bridges and airfields. Columns of infantry follow close behind. Within hours, the Netherlands, neutral, unprepared for prolonged war, is under attack from all directions. The Dutch army resists, but it is outmatched. 5 days later, after the bombing of Rotterdam levels the city centre and kills nearly 900 civilians, the government surrenders. Queen Wilhelmina escapes to London. The occupation begins. At first, life appears deceptively stable. German authorities understand the Netherlands' value. Its ports, Rotterdam foremost among them, are arteries of trade. Its railways connect Germany to the Atlantic coast. Its farmland feeds millions. Rather than destroy the country, the occupiers seek to control it. Civil administration remains Dutch, but under German command. Ration cards are introduced. Food is regulated. Movement is monitored. Radios are confiscated. Jewish citizens are registered, then isolated, then deported. By 1942, trains are carrying Dutch Jews eastward. Auschwitz, Sobibor, destinations not yet fully understood, but feared. The population adapts quietly. Resistance grows in fragments. Illegal newspapers circulate. Families hide Jews in attics and farm sheds. Strikes erupt and are crushed. Executions follow. The occupation tightens. By 1944, the war has changed. Allied forces land in Normandy. Paris is liberated. Brussels falls. Hope reaches the Netherlands through whispers and radio signals. Dutch resistance prepares for liberation. Railway workers strike in support of the Allied advance, believing freedom is days away. But the German response is swift and calculated. In September 1944, Allied commanders launch Operation Market Garden, a bold attempt to leap the Rhine and end the war before winter. Airborne troops land deep inside the Netherlands. Bridges are seized. For a moment, liberation feels inevitable. Then it stalls. At Arnhem, British forces are surrounded. Supply lines fail. The operation collapses. German troops remain entrenched in the western Netherlands, the most densely populated region of the country. Angered by resistance and strikes, German authorities impose a blockade. Food shipments to western cities are halted. Barges are stopped. Rail transport is cut. Fuel is seized. Farms in the countryside still produce food, but it cannot reach the cities. Winter approaches. Coal runs out. Electricity fades. Families dismantle furniture for heat. Bread rations fall below survival levels. Potatoes vanish, sugar disappears, meat becomes memory. Children receive fewer than 500 calories a day. The German command understands the effect. Hunger is leverage. And as the temperatures drop and canals freeze solid, the Western Netherlands enters a crisis not born of battle, but of deliberate deprivation, setting the stage for a winter that will test civilian endurance beyond anything the occupation has yet inflicted. By November 1944, the famine has a name. The Dutch call it the Hongerwinter. The Hongerwinter. It is not a metaphor. It is a description of daily reality. Food rations in Western cities fall below 1,000 calories per person. By January 1945, they drop closer to 500. For children, the numbers are worse. For the elderly, often fatal. Bread is stretched with ground sugar beets. Soup is made from tulip bulbs. People grind acorns and nettles, anything that might quiet the pain in the stomach for an hour. Thousands leave the cities on foot, pulling carts across frozen roads, trading jewelry, furniture, even wedding rings for sacks of potatoes from rural farmers. Many never make it back. Some collapse along the way. Others return empty-handed. Hospitals fill with patients suffering from edema, malnutrition and exposure. Doctors can do little. There are no medicines, no calories to prescribe. Children stop growing. Some stop speaking. Their bodies conserve energy by shutting down what they can. German authorities do not fully seal the border. Small, inconsistent relief trickles through. But it is not enough, and it is never reliable. Entire neighborhoods depend on rumor. Whether a shipment might arrive, whether a barge has slipped through at night. The war still rages beyond the Netherlands. Allied armies fight through the Ardennes. The Battle of the Bulge erupts in December 1944, drawing resources, attention, and aircraft away from humanitarian concerns. The priority remains military victory. Yet reports of starvation reach Allied headquarters. Dutch officials in exile plead for action. Photographs and intelligence summaries describe children weighing half of what they should. The moral dilemma is clear: aid risks strengthening German forces, delay costs civilian lives. By early 1945, even German commanders acknowledge the catastrophe. Cities are failing. Mortality spikes. In Amsterdam alone, thousands die in a single winter. Official estimates after the war will place the civilian death toll from famine at more than 20,000. As the front lines creep closer, negotiations begin, fragile, temporary, and limited. The war has not ended, but starvation has become a liability even for the occupiers. And it is into this devastated landscape, where children are already weakened, families hollowed, and survival reduced to calculation, that American forces advance from the south, unprepared for what they are about to witness, and forced to confront the war from a perspective no battlefield briefing could convey. Hunger announces itself quietly in children, not with screams, but with stillness. By early 1945, Dutch children in the western provinces move slowly, conserving energy. Teachers, where schools still function, watch students fall asleep at their desks, not from boredom, but from exhaustion. Growth stops. Limbs thin. Faces sharpen. Doctors record weights more typical of toddlers than of school-aged children. Parents make impossible calculations. Who eats today? Who waits? Mothers dilute soup until it is little more than warm water. Fathers leave at dawn to scavenge, returning at night with nothing. Children learn not to ask. The famine reshapes childhood itself. Games disappear. Curiosity fades. The instinct to survive replaces the instinct to play. Angle 2. The mothers, women carry the burden of the hunger winter in visible ways. They stand in ration lines for hours in freezing temperatures, hoping supplies have not run out before their turn. They barter possessions piece by piece, first furniture, then clothing, then heirlooms. Some cut their own hair to trade for bread. Others risk arrest by crossing German checkpoints with food hidden under coats. Many are caught. Some are beaten. A few are shot. For mothers, starvation is not abstract. It has a face. Their child's face, growing thinner each morning. Angle 3. The American soldier. When American troops first enter famine-stricken Dutch areas, they do not encounter cheering crowds. They encounter silence. Soldiers trained for combat expect resistance, ambush, rubble. They do not expect children staring without expression. They do not expect to see ribs beneath coats. They do not expect hands extended, not in greeting but in need. Rations become moral currency. Officially, supplies are controlled. Unofficially, soldiers break rules. Chocolate bars, K-rations, canned meat. Each item is small, but to a starving child, it is life. Many soldiers later describe the same reaction: shock, followed by anger, not at the enemy in front of them, but at a system that allowed children to reach this state. And as these encounters multiply, the famine stops being a background condition. It becomes the defining reality of liberation, demanding a response that goes beyond military objectives and leads directly into questions of responsibility, limits, and the shape of mercy in war. Delivering aid in wartime is never simple. Roads are mined or blocked. Bridges destroyed during retreat prevent trucks from reaching western cities. Rail lines, the backbone of Dutch transport, are crippled by sabotage or bombing. American supply officers face a dual challenge: feed civilians without strengthening enemy positions. The solution emerges in unusual forms. Food is stockpiled near liberated zones. Air drops are planned. Cooks and medics improvise. Soldiers carry parcels on foot, often for miles, to reach families cut off from official channels. Each ration distributed is a minor tactical victory in a war that has largely ignored the civilian front. Angle 5. German command decisions. The famine is not purely natural, it is engineered. German authorities understand the political and military utility of starvation. By late 1944, supply blockades are imposed not only to protect German forces, but to punish resistance. Farmers are restricted from sending goods to cities. Civilians are monitored and penalized for attempting to smuggle food. Yet, by early 1945, even German commanders express concern. They recognize that their actions, while tactically advantageous, create a humanitarian crisis with long-term consequences. Some lower-ranking officers discreetly allow food shipments or turn a blind eye to smuggling, revealing cracks in the rigid machinery of occupation. Angle 6. Moral imperative law of war. International law, even in wartime, has limits designed to protect civilians. The Hongerwinter tests those limits. Allied officers debate whether diverting supplies to civilians constitutes an acceptable risk. Soldiers confront ethical dilemmas, obey orders, or feed the starving child at their feet. The juxtaposition is stark. On one side, strategy, advancing fronts, victory calculations. On the other, emaciated children, women coughing from malnutrition, elders too weak to walk. The moral clarity is unmistakable. Inaction equates to complicity. Action, even small, becomes a tangible defiance of cruelty, a human counterpoint to military conflict. Each angle, human, tactical, enemy, moral, prepares the stage for what comes next, the decisive moment when American soldiers shift from observers of famine to active agents of relief, and the Hongerwinter begins its slow reversal. Winter thaws slowly in early 1945, but the Dutch landscape remains grey and brittle. Streets are mud and ice, buildings scarred by occupation and bombardment. Yet, at the southern edges of the western provinces, a distant sound signals the approaching promise of change, the hum of Allied vehicles and low, flying aircraft. American infantry and armored divisions push northward. They encounter towns emptied of supplies, markets abandoned, and civilians whose eyes have grown accustomed to despair. Soldiers report children hiding in doorways, staring at strangers not with fear, but with a quiet, puzzled recognition help has arrived. The first organized relief efforts emerge in late February. Field kitchens are established, small caches of canned goods and preserved rations distributed under military supervision. Medics examine children whose stomachs are swollen from malnutrition, women with frost-bitten hands, and elderly men who have walked miles for a single potato. Each intervention is small in scale, but monumental in effect. Communication is key. Dutch resistance guides American units through collapsed streets, mapping where children and families are most vulnerable. Trucks carry flour, sugar, and powdered milk, moving cautiously through damaged roads, often under threat of lingering German snipers or leftover mines. Soldiers learn quickly. Speed saves lives. Hesitation kills. In one village, a platoon arrives to find over 24 children confined to a single, drafty schoolroom. Their bodies are fragile, their voices barely audible. An officer opens ration boxes and distributes what they can carry. Chocolate bars, powdered milk, and bread. Children clutch the supplies as though they are treasures. Some cry quietly. Others sit in stunned silence, unsure if hope has truly arrived. The tension of battle is replaced, momentarily, by the weight of responsibility. This is a front line of a different kind, one measured not in territory gained, but in lives saved. Every ration delivered, every child helped, represents a small victory against an enemy that has inflicted suffering not with bullets, but with starvation. And as American soldiers continue to advance, their mission transforms. Liberation is no longer solely about defeating German forces. It is about restoring life, one ration, one child, one village at a time, a prelude to the larger operations that will finally break the famine's grip. By late March 1945, the scale of intervention grows dramatically. The Allies coordinate with the Dutch government, in exile in London to plan Operation Manna, an unprecedented aerial relief effort. Bomber squadrons, once instruments of destruction, are repurposed to carry food. Bomb bays are filled not with explosives, but with thousands of pounds of flour, sugar, and other essential rations. Planes fly low, precisely over designated drop zones in western cities and towns, where civilians, guided by local resistance, assemble with blankets to catch the supplies. The risk is extraordinary. Anti-aircraft positions remain active. Pilots descend to mere hundreds of feet, timing drops with precision to avoid collateral damage. Every sortie is a tightrope walk over a land that has seen too much war. On the ground, American soldiers coordinate distribution. Trucks navigate treacherous streets, aided by guides who know which buildings house the weakest families. Children run toward the vehicles, faces gaunt, but eyes alive for the first time in months. Soldiers lift bundles hand to hand, as if each parcel carries the weight of the entire winter. Simultaneously, Operation Chowhound, a joint British-American effort, begins. Food is parachuted into Rotterdam, The Hague, and smaller towns along the western coast. Dutch civilians, some with frostbitten hands, some too weak to stand, gather the packages, tears mixing with snow and mud. Mothers distribute rations immediately, prioritizing infants and toddlers. Fathers carry supplies back to homes that have gone weeks without heat or bread. Accounts from the period describe scenes of quiet astonishment. Children taste sugar for the first time in months. Families share potatoes with neighbors. Schools that had been empty are filled again with the smell of bread being baked in small ovens. Soldiers and civilians alike recognize the gravity of the moment. This is not merely feeding the hungry. It is a reclaiming of dignity stolen by months of deprivation. By April, mortality rates begin to stabilize. Children start to gain weight, though the scars of famine remain visible. Soldiers report that even hardened men are moved to tears. For the first time in half a year, the streets hum not with fear, but tentative life. This turning point, the convergence of military advance, logistical ingenuity, and moral imperative, marks the moment when American forces stop being witnesses to suffering and become instruments of its reversal. It is a victory measured not in kilometers gained, but in lives restored, setting the stage for the aftermath that will define the Netherlands' liberation not only militarily, but humanly. Spring 1945 brings more than melting ice. It brings the slow, painful reckoning with months of famine. Dutch cities emerge from winter with thousands of lives lost, neighborhoods emptied, and families fractured. In Amsterdam alone, an estimated 20 Zalozan civilians died from starvation and related illnesses during the Hongerwinter. Across Rotterdam, The Hague, and smaller towns, children show physical signs of malnutrition, stunted growth, thin limbs, and weakened immune systems. Hospitals, overcrowded and under-resourced, struggle to meet the demand even after relief arrives. For American soldiers, the aftermath is a study in both triumph and trauma. Many record diaries describing the horror they witnessed: infants whose tiny bodies had shrunk alarmingly, mothers desperate to feed multiple children with a single ration, and elders too weak to leave their homes. Yet, alongside this despair is the tangible sense of accomplishment. Every child saved, every family aided represents a victory beyond battlefield statistics. Logistically, the relief efforts continue to expand. Rations delivered by trucks and air drops now coordinate with local Dutch authorities, civilian volunteers and resistance members. Flour mills resume operations, but scarcity persists. The Allies maintain a cautious approach. Every kilogram of food sent must be accounted for, balancing the need to prevent German forces from intercepting supplies with the imperative to save lives. The famine has also left profound psychological scars. Survivors report difficulty trusting strangers, anxiety around meals, and lingering fear of deprivation. Soldiers notice that children, while eating again, remain cautious, hesitant to believe that food is no longer a precious commodity to be hoarded. Mothers who lost children carry grief quietly, their resilience tempered by memory of loss. Yet even amid the suffering, seeds of recovery emerge. Schools reopen with warm meals provided to students. Churches and community centers become distribution points, offering both food and a sense of stability. The Dutch population begins to reclaim aspects of normal life, even as the shadow of hunger lingers. This fragile recovery lays the groundwork for broader post-war reconstruction and highlights a central truth. Liberation is not solely a matter of defeating armies, but also of restoring humanity in the wake of deliberate suffering. By late April 1945, the Western Netherlands is largely liberated. German forces surrender or retreat, leaving behind cities scarred by occupation and famine. Streets once silent and ghostly begin to fill with cautious activity. Markets reopen, and small-scale trading resumes. The first fresh produce, brought in from the liberated countryside, is celebrated almost as a miracle. American soldiers remain at the forefront of relief. Beyond distributing food, they assist in rebuilding critical infrastructure, repairing bridges, clearing streets, and helping hospitals stabilize. Medics work tirelessly to treat malnourished children, administering vitamins, milk, and protein-rich diets. Observers note remarkable progress. Children who had been near death begin to regain weight and energy, though many remain undernourished for months to come. The human response is profound. Families, once silent and withdrawn, slowly reconnect. Community kitchens form, feeding dozens at a time. Dutch newspapers, censored under occupation, now report openly about the famine and its rescue. Letters of gratitude pour into Allied units. One mother writes of her child, "For the first time in months, my daughter smiled at her breakfast." Such accounts multiply, creating a collective narrative of hope and survival that will endure in Dutch memory for generations. The broader consequences are also measured. Mortality data collected after the war shows that timely intervention by Allied forces prevented thousands of additional deaths in the final weeks of occupation. Relief operations like Operation Manna and Chohond are studied post-war as examples of humanitarian intervention under wartime conditions, influencing future doctrines on civilian protection. Psychologically, the famine leaves scars that extend beyond survival. Children born during the Hongerwinter exhibit higher rates of developmental and health challenges. Yet for those who lived through it, the relief offered by American soldiers becomes a defining memory. A moment when the abstract promise of liberation became a tangible act of care. The Netherlands, still emerging from the shadow of war, begins its journey toward recovery. Allied intervention, both military and humanitarian, demonstrates a rare convergence of victory in war measured not only in defeated armies, but in preserved lives. The winter of 1944-45 left the Western Netherlands suspended between life and death. Starvation had stripped away normalcy, turning streets into silent corridors of suffering, homes into fragile shelters against the cold, and children into living reminders of war's human cost. Yet, in the midst of despair, the arrival of American soldiers transformed the narrative. Relief was not simply ration bars or parachuted flour. It was a reclamation of dignity, a signal that even in the machinery of total war, individual acts of humanity could alter destiny. Operation Manna and Chohond, alongside soldiers distributing food by hand, illustrate a profound truth. War is measured not only by battles won or cities captured, but by the capacity to protect the innocent, to intervene when humanity is at its weakest. The Hongerwinter, horrific in its scope, became a testament to the moral imperative that guides soldiers, planners, and nations alike. One small ration might save a child, one carefully delivered parcel might restore hope to an entire family. For the Dutch, the liberation was never purely military. It was personal, intimate, and immediate. The memory of starving children finally receiving sustenance, of mothers able to feed their families, endures in the country's collective consciousness. For American soldiers, the experience became a reminder that victory carries responsibility, that the end of occupation is incomplete without the restoration of life itself. The famine, the suffering, and the rescue converge in a single lesson. Even in the darkest winters of war, hope can return. And sometimes, it returns on the hands of strangers, bearing food, compassion, and the quiet insistence that humanity endures beyond the cruelty of conflict.